Hello, industry explorers. Welcome to another episode on our live stream series. Today we have Alexandria Bellivan talking to us about why you should hire entertainment workers. We're going to dig deep into how the pandemic has affected entertainment as a whole, what workers are doing to find work, tips and strategies for searching for a job, and many, many other things. I'm really excited. And Alexandria, how are you today?
I am good. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Me too. I love your content on LinkedIn, and I think everybody should follow you. Now, we typically start this off by you sharing with us your life story in 2 minutes. Are you ready?
I am ready. Sure.
Awesome. All right, here we go. And start.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm really excited to be here, and I really hope that you find my story interesting. I have 2 degrees, one in sociology and one in nonprofit management. And after I graduated from college, I jumped right into workforce development, and I actually started my career with youth in parts of Brooklyn, so like Bed-Stuy and Bushwick. So I would help them become work ready, so on and so forth. And I did that for about 5 years, and it was time for me to change gears. And one thing about me, even though I graduated with sociology with my bachelor's, I was heavily involved in the theater. So I loved going to all my theater classes. And I was actually in a couple of shows. I even went to England for a theater program for a little bit. So I was able to network my way to the Actors Fund. And I have been working with the entertainment industry for the past 5 years. And by entertainment industry and by Actors Fund, I don't mean just actors. I work with everyone, not just performers. So directors, stagehands, writers, anybody that has touched a stage or a film, that's who I work with. And I've been creating programs around workforce development to help entertainment professionals seek other streams of income outside of the industry while they do pursue their creative endeavors. And here I am. So that's, oh my goodness, I did good. 1.5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
During the pandemic has been really exciting. Even though it's been a traumatic experience for a lot of people, but there's a lot of work that's been done during this time in terms of workforce development and the entertainment industry for sure. So yeah.
So let's talk 10 seconds to spare, really 13 seconds to spare. So let's talk about workforce development. When we're talking about entertainment as a whole, the entertainment industry, let's just say it comprises of, actors, directors, producers, the crew, and even within all of those umbrellas that I just listed, there's multiple different specialties underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you prepare to do a job like that, for me, it could include rigging training. For others, it may include lighting training, automation, or for performers, you may have to go do, like, if you're an acrobat, there's a lot of stuff that you do to prepare for that physically and mentally. And it's a lot of really hard work. But what really brings us all together is our dedication to our craft. And when you've got this pandemic just kind of destroying everything, right? We've all prepared for our craft. We've all done so much to make it, to do our best with our craft and put forth the best products we can. I mean, has anybody been to a concert or seen a good film? Like, come on, guys, that's us. With workforce development, how are you helping your clients make a shift?
So the best that I can do with my clients is teach them the way that the non-entertainment industry world works in terms of finding work. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it's not just entertainment work that is not attainable. It's also all the other types of survival work that most of my clients usually go for: dog walking, babysitting, or also waiting tables, cater waitering. So all those jobs and events as well, all those jobs are also not available. So most of the income that an entertainment professional would actually generate, that's also not an option right now. So the only option is to say, okay, let's look at your experience and let's see where your problem solving skills are needed right now. So in the beginning of the pandemic, I was so like a broken record every single day in my classes. I would say, what is a problem that's happening right now that you can fix during the pandemic? Because that is what people need. So for example, there was a costume designer that decided, okay, I'm just going to create masks and sell them on Etsy. And this costume designer was able to make a whole income during the pandemic because they were able to bring their costume designing skills into an area of problem solving that's needed right now. So one of my major tips for anybody that's out there, no matter what discipline you're in, there is a way for you to be useful during this time, even performers. And I think that performers specifically have the hardest time because what are they paid to do? They're paid to get in front of an audience. And right now, Broadway, for example, they can't do that right now until June. And even when June comes, we don't know if that is going to be extended. But even you can actually be useful during this time and a problem solver and make income. Like, for example, Airbnb has this amazing virtual experience section on their website. You know, usually you could sign up on Airbnb for an in-person experience, like a cooking class or something. And now they've actually been able to move that online. And there are Rockettes that are on Airbnb. There's like a murder mysteries on there. And there's a magician on there. That's actually my really good friend. So no matter what discipline you're in right now, there is a way for you to generate income in a way that's needed, right? Because people still need to be entertained from home. And there's only so much Netflix that we could watch. So that's my main point of advice for people in the industry.
Have you noticed any pandemic job trends?
So yes, I mean, in terms of searching for work and the recruitment process, there has been a lot that has changed. And one thing that has changed for sure, and not for the better, is lengthier interview processes. So that's something that a lot of people can expect. One of my clients, who is a singer and a stage manager, was able to get a content creation type of role. And it was funny because she actually originally wasn't going to apply for the job because she didn't meet like 2 requirements. And I was like, you're going to apply for this anyway. And that's a main thing that I always tell. Also, something that a lot of people aren't aware of, especially in the entertainment industry, is if I don't meet all these requirements, I'm not allowed to apply. But the point is that she was able to get this job and it was great, but it took her like 2 months because of the amount of interviews that she had to go through. And she's not the only one. There's been a lot of my clients that have gone through it. I'm even feeling the fatigue from all the interview prepping I have to do for them. So that's one thing that I've noticed. Another thing that is definitely a huge one is retention, and that kind of is attached to the lengthy interview process. There is a lot of fear with employers right now to hire the wrong person. And this is something that's especially important for entertainment workers to keep in mind, because as an entertainment worker, your first choice is to be in the entertainment industry, unless you're transitioning into something new. But if your first choice is to be in the entertainment industry, and you're interviewing for a job that's full-time or part-time, whatever, it doesn't matter how many hours you're putting into it. Unless it says temporary, the employer that's hiring you really wants you there for the long term. So a lot of entertainment professionals are being faced with this question of what happens when the entertainment industry comes back up? And also, why do you want to work here for? I mean, like, look at your background. You were just in a show right before all of this happened. What makes you want to work here? And so that's something.
Because the show is gone.
I know. Exactly. I actually had a client that was in West Side Story, and she was performing on Broadway for a couple months. And that was part of her hesitation to reaching out to employers and starting to look for work is, one, because she's hoping like that this wouldn't have lasted as long as it has. Unfortunately, now we're at the point where it's like, okay, this is lasting really long, and I need to just, think to myself, what's the harm in looking for something that's long term, and I will cross that bridge of when the entertainment industry gets here. And employers that are interviewing entertainment industry professionals should feel the same way. That's another thing that I always say too.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the benefits of hiring a creative. First question, what do you define as a creative?
Oh man, this is such a good question and one I didn't think about before, but I think that creatives, the one thing that are amazing about creatives is they can think on their feet in most cases. And I talked about this in another podcast recently that think about a live audience and a live performance and all the things that goes wrong behind the scenes. In fact, I went to a show once and the poor thing, the lead got sick in the middle of the show, and when intermission popped back, like after intermission, we had a whole new lead, and it was fine, you know? And so
Yeah.
it's just amazing how you're not even bothered because this amazing stand-in was so fabulous, and she knew I have to follow up halfway through the show the lead's performance. And so I think that that's one thing that's really amazing about them is that they could jump in and they can really execute their craft 100% when it's necessary. And that's the other thing is that most of the time creatives are in this place where they have to perform in front of an audience, whether it is you're the performer or you're backstage, because again, there's so much stuff that's happening technically backstage. And I have been working with so many stage managers, and the podcast that I've heard them be on and describe their work is truly amazing because they have to think on their feet really quickly too to make sure the lights stay on. And
Right.
so I think that that's one thing is that there is a lot of critical thinking and problem solving that happens with a creative for sure, but also just being authentic and genuine and original. I think that's always really lovely is that they're always trying to think of authentic and original type of content or even just ways to fix things. And that's the other thing is to be a creative, you want to always create something new. I mean, of course, we appreciate the systems that we create that work, but there's always an easier way to do it, or there's always a better way to do it, or, a more colorful way to do it. I think that's the other thing is that creatives are also they have this growth mindset and they want to see things change. So that's another thing I would say is that they're innovative.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
And how does that innovation translate to other sectors, to other job sectors?
It's so interesting because all sectors, I feel like, want to be innovative. I mean, you see the word innovation in almost every mission statement that you look at now, or any website. It's like on any company's website in some way, shape, or form is that we do this in an innovative way or an original way. And so I think
it's all the adjectives with the ER at the end: safer, faster, or efficiently, more this, more that.
Yep.
And like you said, everybody is striving to be innovative because that's the only way to stay on top of any job market, right? Is to be one step ahead of your competition. So we want innovative people to tackle whatever problem we have.
Right, especially with technology. And I mean, this goes back to transferable skills as well, and also it goes back to trends during the pandemic. Is that there's been this rise of technology, businesses using technology, businesses that thought that this wasn't going to last that long and that they would be back in the office are now saying, no, we're not going to go back to the office until September. And also there's going to be more work from home options, or companies that are just saying we're going to be work from home permanently.
Mm-hmm.
So, businesses are actually innovating much more rapidly. And I think that this is a great time to say, like, anybody that's in production, if you are a company that is trying to coordinate technology and also working from home options, and especially if you have a component of needing to use Zoom. I mean, the Actors Fund, we use Zoom for everything. I mean, we have so many workshops and webinars, and we use Zoom for our meetings. So, if you are a company that is heavily using equipment like cameras and lights and microphones, production people are the people you want to that you want on your corner. I mean, like for me, I'm not a production person, but my boyfriend is, and that's why you see this beautiful setup here. It's got the microphone and the light, and so that is somebody that you want to be helping. That's somebody that you want on your team to assist the rest of your team that might not be tech savvy or might need assistance with doing a better job at managing, communicating via the internet. And that's another thing, is communication, I think, is a huge benefit of hiring creative. I mean, the communication, I have not met one client that is not good at communicating with me, no matter what discipline they are in. I mean, it's kind of amazing. They're very transparent about everything, which I think is also needed, the honesty and transparency in the business world for sure. And also just clear communication as well. Most of my clients, I would trust them to always think ahead and be that person that's going to say to your boss, like, this is what's going on, or this is what I think is better. Like, they're very vocal. So not only are they creative and they come up with really good ideas, but they are very vocal and they communicate their thoughts really well. So that's another benefit for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of people, performers, producers, backstage crew, like every single person involved in an entertainment or event is very well as I stumble on my words, they do really well with communication because they're used to communicating across multiple departments, right?
Right.
Again, it doesn't matter like what discipline it is or how high on the hierarchy you're communicating. A lot of people in entertainment are used to communicating this way as well as this way.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course, because every production is different, right? So most creatives are very comfortable and also know to kind of assess first, like what is a hierarchy here? How does it work? Like, so that's another thing too, is that they are always thrown into different, it's so funny, as we're talking, you just come up with way more benefits as we go on. Like, very adaptable because of the fact that there's no such thing as a similar experience when it comes to working in the entertainment industry. I mean, there's of course the general rules that most follow, right? But at the same time, so many productions are so different in the way that they are run, especially if you're somebody that works both in film and theater. So you're actually somebody that has to adapt between the two different mediums. So that's another thing, is being adaptable is another huge, huge benefit. And I think that's really important for employers that are not in the entertainment industry to realize that someone in the entertainment industry is doing basically all the same things that they would do in an office. It's just not in an office. It's like on a film set or in a theater.
Yeah. Or in a trailer.
In a trailer, right. Exactly.
In a trailer on the set.
The environment is just different. But for so long, I mean, I've been in this industry for 5 years, but this problem has been happening forever, where creatives feel like they can't share their creative work with non-entertainment employers. And that's a huge problem, especially right now, because you have a lot of workers that were happily working and were doing well before the pandemic happened. I mean, I worked on emergency financial grants, and it was really amazing to see how many entertainment professionals were just like, they were just blindsided by all this. They were working consistently, makeup artists, stagehands, actors, like everybody that I reviewed grants for. It was truly amazing to see how consistent their work was. And now they just can't work anymore, and they weren't expecting or thinking that they needed to make this change. So you're even talking about right now, you're not just talking about people that are creatives that also had survival jobs on the side. You're talking about people that have just been making their living working in the entertainment industry. And those people can't hide their background on the resume because that's what their background has been. One of my clients, she has been fortunate to always work in the industry for the last 20 years. She never even needed to work in a restaurant. Like, she's just always worked in the industry. And now she's working at Anthropology, And before you know, during the beginning of the pandemic, when she first came on as my client, she was like, this is impossible. Like, how am I supposed to make this work? I need another job. But how am I supposed to convince an employer that, I just worked with this really amazing band in Vegas, and now I have to convince an employer that this is what I want to do instead. So, but she did, and she did great. And so that's also a really good message for people to remember, that it's possible. You can actually do it, and you don't have to hide your entertainment industry experience either to get it.
So I want to ask another question along the lines of benefits of hiring a creative. What are the benefits of hiring a creative who wants to rejoin the entertainment industry, say if it comes back 6 months from now or a year from now? Why? I'm the employer. Why do I want to hire someone who doesn't want to stay in 6 months or a year?
I think the first thing that I would respond with to that is that I have been working really hard to make sure that my clients are actually interviewing for jobs that they would want if the entertainment industry was not an option, right? So I am making sure that they are putting together lists of companies that they really admire, that they would want to work for, companies that they probably wouldn't give up a job. They wouldn't give up for an entertainment gig unless it was a really good gig, which is going to be rare for a while. And I think that's another thing to remember, is that it's not just going to be 6 months or a year. It's going to be a lot longer than that. I've talked to a lot of my clients, and even though, let's just say that it's safe to have live performances in 6 years, it's not going to be like the floodgates are opening. It's not going to be that way in terms of work. It's going to be slow moving. So I would say for employers, like, you shouldn't expect them to leave in 6 months. And that's even without a pandemic. Even without a pandemic, it's hard for someone to find industry work that's consistent enough for them to actually give up a full-time gig that they secure. But the other thing too is, I think it's so unfair for employers to do that to entertainment workers, because the thing is, the same could be said about anyone that wants something better. I mean, I have worked in so many environments where you have somebody new come on board and you're so excited, like, yes, we've been waiting for you, you're great. And then like a couple weeks later, they're like, oh, I got a better offer, by this other job that I interviewed for before I got this job, so I'm going to leave. So it's like, why aren't we asking, we're not asking this question of, well, what if a better job comes along? Because that's essentially what you're saying, right? You're essentially saying, what if a better job comes along the way? Are you going to leave? So it's like, if you don't ask that question to everybody else, why are you asking it to entertainment industry professionals? Like, if they didn't want this job, they wouldn't be applying for it. And I think the other thing too is, like, look, I mean, in most cases, entertainment industry professionals, they will do anything and will be the best worker that you will ever have if you work with them and give them a more flexible schedule, right? And that's the other thing, is that if you just are a little bit flexible, let's say that you do hire them for 6 months to a year, and then a job does pop up in the entertainment industry, they will actually try and negotiate with you and say, listen, I don't want to leave this job. They would actually, in most cases, say, I'd like to figure out a way to do both. And and they can. I mean, imagine having somebody that is so dedicated to their first love that they will work overtime and do a great job for you because you're gifting them this opportunity to keep on making consistent income. Because that's the other thing, is that they're not making as much income as you think that they are on the show, but it's still a good opportunity for them to take it. So, that's a really long-winded answer.
There's a lot to unpack there, right? I would say if an employer is thinking of asking someone that question, well, what's stopping you from turning it back around on them? Well, I don't know what's going to happen 6 months from now. I don't know what's going to happen a year from now. So, you know, nobody really knows. So again, that goes back to it kind of being just an unfair question, right? And if you're only asking people with the entertainment experience in your interview, if they get to the interview process, well then to do so, otherwise you're kind of discriminating against people with a certain background, right? That's the definition of discrimination. So you should be consistently asking every single candidate that type of question, right? And then to further that, why, if you're concerned about anybody with any background leaving your place of work, well, then what can you do to make your work culture better? What can you do to make the environment better for your workers? You know, think about the hours, think about the mission, and not just the company mission statement, but think about how can you make your employees have a sense of purpose at their job, right? Because I think that's something that like our generation really appreciates. We want to make an impact. We want to have an impact on our world, and we want to leave a lasting benefit on the world. And that's what people in our generation really, really want to accomplish. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we want to accomplish so many things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope that I mean, even though the pandemic has been atrocious in so many ways, there are some ways that it might have improved things, right? So we have been our
balance.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and this is something that our generation has been fighting for tooth and nail, and I think that everybody believes that we're, you know, hear all this talk about like, well, millennials are just lazy. It's like, well, no, I mean, you benefit from it too, don't you? It's like,
yeah,
it's not just for us. We want, and I think that the reason is, I mean, I see people like my mother, and I mean, my mother works so hard her entire life. My father too, my stepdad too, they work so hard, and I just see the pain and them like being afraid to need to ask for vacation time. Like, you know, it's like, you have it, you've earned it, but they still need to ask permission. And you know, we see that and you see that they hate that they have to do it. And so we've seen our parents suffer with the work culture that they've experienced, and we want to make it better because we're like, what's the big deal? Why do we have to ask permission for everything? Why can't there be more trust in the workplace? So I think now, though, because we've all needed to be working from home, a majority of us have been needing to work from home. Employers have needed to force themselves to figure out, all right, we're going to have to just trust our employees then. And, you know, some organizations and businesses have done, you know, have taken this easier than others. But I think the good thing is, even though it's not good that a pandemic has been happening for as long as it's been happening, we are now at the point where we can say, listen, enough is enough. We've been doing this way for a year. And it's gotten to the point where, too, employees are going to say, I'm not just going to go back to the way things were. Like, I've been in my pajamas for like an entire year working. Like, I even told my boss, I was like, I'm only coming back if I can wear sweatpants on Fridays. Like, dress
on Fridays, sweatpant Fridays. I love it.
On Fridays, that needs to change from jeans to sweatpants, okay? But you know, it's gotten to the point where, yeah, I think that employers are going to be more flexible and more open, and I hope that that's easier for people in the entertainment industry. I hope it's easier for people with disabilities too. I mean,
yeah, and for parents.
And for parents, absolutely.
Or like especially new parents, right? Who have like a newborn or toddler that they have to either watch after or pay for childcare services.
I know.
No, I hope it's easier on those people, right? I just had a thought. So, yeah, and it's not just about employers providing flexibility and options. The return on providing those things to their employers, or to the employer providing that to the employees, is in return, they get streamlined processes. I love when people talk about how they're not really for the 40-hour work week because, if a substantial percentage of that is spent on social media anyway while they're at their desk, well, how much work are you really getting done? Do we really need a 40-hour work week or a 60-hour work week or an 80-hour work week? Maybe you do. And if you do, great. As long as that time is well spent, right? But if it's not, then how are we going to streamline these processes? When you streamline processes, then you're going to get more productivity. You're going to get a greater return. And I just think it's like I think it's a cycle that people are really opening up to now, and employers are considering for their employees.
Yeah, no,
I mean, I can't speak for all companies, obviously. Like there's multiple examples of workplaces, and hopefully as a collective we're starting to see we're just starting to see better change. We're just starting to see changes for the better, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope that there's just more choice for employees. And in fact, in LinkedIn's recent recruitment trend survey, employers are prioritizing employee experience. So that's a good thing. And again, they want to retain their employees. So they have to focus more on, okay, well, what do our employees want? And I think that most employers will find that, most of their employees just want choice in the matter and like
autonomy, because we're adults.
Exactly autonomy, because there's no need to have any of this, it's either this or that talk. And I never understood that. I see so many LinkedIn posts about, okay, if you have the option to only work from home or only work from the office, like what would you choose? It's like, okay, you're literally not going to get a consistent answer. Like there's so many people that have different feelings and different circumstances, right? So, you can't, and why does it need to be that way? Obviously, there are some jobs out there that you have to be on site for, like in the healthcare industry, you have to be in most cases in person. I mean, like obviously telehealth has changed a lot. Right. What we've, how we viewed health and how we need to be taken care of. Like, it's like, oh wow, I can actually Skype my doctor and not go all through the trouble of going there. But either way, there are a lot of industries and jobs out there where you do have to be on site. But at the same time, it's just, think about how much easier we're making it for those people in terms of traffic, for example. I mean, if you just gave people the option to work from home, you'll have less cars on the road. And then those people that have to be like construction workers or nurses or whatever, that have to be at their jobs at the crack of dawn, don't have to leave their houses so early. Like this is where my mind goes somewhere sometimes. Like, there's a huge percentage of the United States that's uninhabited. Like it's not used at all. And it's like, wow, we really do condense our cities so much. And I think that a lot of young people, for myself included, I mean, like I live in Brooklyn. I love living in the city. I love working in the city. But it's expensive, so part of me is like, one day I would like to just move somewhere else that's cheaper and just keep on doing my job, right? Because I love my job and I've proven for the past year that I can do my job from home, but, and I think that a lot of people feel the same way, especially young people that live in cities. So that's another thing as well in terms of, the future of work is hopefully we will see more of this option. And that's just beneficial for entertainment industry professionals, especially for touring as well. So coming back to them, like, I have, I remember one of the first, like my first year at the Actors Fund, a client gave me this idea of reaching out to doctors that needed personal assistants, like psychologists and psychiatrists and things like that. Because he was a personal assistant for one, and he was able to do it while he was on tour because it was all virtual. Because all he had to do was book his appointments and be the liaise between the client and the pharmacy. And so it was like, yeah, this one doctor was like, why shouldn't I hire you? Like, why do I need to have you in the office for? That's silly, right?
Mhm.
And that was really forward thinking of that doctor. And so anyway, that's just another thing as well, that I hope changes.
Yeah, there's a lot of black and white thinking out there, and it's made worse by social media, right? Social media is this wonderful magnifying glass that takes something really small and just blows it out of proportion, blows it out of context. And people, when they respond or contribute, often have black or white ways of thinking. Do you want to only work from home or do you want to only work in the office? And that is a cognitive distortion.
Right.
Society literally suffers from cognitive distortions. I'm not a therapist. However, that's what I've learned through cognitive behavioral training or cognitive behavioral therapy, right? So you're absolutely right. We shouldn't be thinking black or white. We need to think about how to blend the pros of multiple options to really make something efficient.
Mhm.
So what are some of the tools that people can use? You've been using a new LinkedIn tool. I would love for you to share more about that with our audience.
I have been working with LinkedIn, I mean, using the platform for the past 5 years. It was actually one of the first projects that I was assigned when I came to the Actors Fund, because the mystery of an entertainment professional using LinkedIn 5 years ago was real. And it still kind of is, but it's getting better in some ways. 5 years ago, when I first started using LinkedIn, it was yet to be bought out by Microsoft. So ever since Microsoft bought out LinkedIn, it's been a lot different. So it has become much more of a social platform. And that's really great. I actually saw a post the other day that was talking about how LinkedIn's news feed is just one great big business discussion that's live and ongoing. And I think that that's a
Mm.
really great way of describing LinkedIn. And I think that in terms of creatives using LinkedIn, it can be tough with your profile. Everything else is just as beneficial for you as it is for anybody else, because the platform is used for networking. The profile itself is definitely tough for an entertainment professional to navigate. There's no place for somebody to put down that they're affiliated with a union and to actually tag the union, which I have a huge problem with, right? Because
Mm.
a lot of a lot of the entertainment industry is union work. And a lot of my clients are either SAG-AFTRA or Actors Equity or an IATSE. So there should be a place for you to put that, but there isn't. And then there's also the reverse chronological aspect of it as well. So you only can create your experience section in reverse chronological order, which could be also a huge problem for entertainment workers because of how sporadic their work is. So having some flexibility in kind of adjusting the experience section that's not just reverse chronological would also be helpful. But I will say this, one of my favorite sections of the profile is the featured section. And I think that could help
Mm.
a lot of entertainment industry professionals. Think about your reel, any articles that you were in, any YouTube videos that you were in, or anything that you were featured in. You could actually put all of that material in the featured section. And what I like about it is that it's all the way at the top of your profile, right below the intro box where your headline is, and so on and so forth. So that's really, really important. And the other thing that I've been telling my clients to do in their experience section is, because it's in reverse chronological, and because I don't believe in gaps for entertainment industry professionals. I mean, most of my clients feel like, oh, I didn't work for 3 months, like I wasn't in a show or anything, so I wasn't working. In my opinion, that's false. You were working, you were going on casting calls, or you were submitting applications, or you were doing things to market yourself. There's still things that you do as an entertainment industry
Training,
professional.
rehabilitating.
all those things. Oh my goodness. I'm like talking with your hands. So that's like, there's still things that you do in between shows, and you have to view yourself as an entrepreneur, right? And so an entrepreneur, even though they don't have a client, they don't see that as a gap in employment, because they're still marketing, they're still reaching out, they're still doing all the things that they're supposed to be doing to find that next client. But an entrepreneur who's building a business doesn't see that as a gap, but an entertainment professional does. And that's gotta stop. They have to see themselves as, I'm still working. So because I don't believe in gaps, what I do tell my clients to do in their experience section is to create one job block in your experience section that covers all of your entertainment industry experience. And you can show progression by including one job block that is non-union. And if you are union, you could close that off and say, okay, like I was non-union from this year to this year, like 2012 or whatever. And then you could create a whole other job block, and then you could put that you were in the union. So let's say SAG-AFTRA from 2012 to present, right? And I urge, if you do this, I urge you to put that you're a union member in parentheses, because if you do tag the union that you're in, because you could tag the company in the experience section, but if you do that and someone's browsing through the SAG-AFTRA network, you'll want to be able to differentiate that you're not an actual person that works for SAG-AFTRA, but that you're a union member, because again, there's nowhere for you to put that you're affiliated with a union. There is a place on the platform where you could put that you have company affiliations, but the problem with that is, and there's also a project section, but the problem with both of those sections is that you can't tag the company. And so because you can't tag the company, you're not included in the company's network when someone's searching for it, unless someone is searching for it by keyword search. But that's less likely. Someone is more likely to search for SAG-AFTRA and say, like, click on employees that work for SAG-AFTRA. So just like so frustrating that there's a place for you to go through alumni for universities and schools. There's a place for you to go through the network of a company for people that work there, but there's not a place for union members. And it's not just there's more than just entertainment unions. There's a lot of different unions. So I feel like that's something that needs to be put on LinkedIn to make things a little bit clearer. But that's been my hack for the last couple of months when teaching these classes. So that's another thing. And I mean, the last thing though is, once you get a handle on your profile, you're like, okay, it looks as good as it's gonna get. You know, that's just the beginning. You know, the next part is really networking, creating content. There is a right and a wrong way. I feel like on LinkedIn, there is a certain tone, there is a certain way that you want to create your content, which is why I actually teach a whole content creation class, and which is why I have a LinkedIn challenge. And, you know, I think the last thing though is that a lot of the reason why creatives don't do this is because they just don't believe that there's a creative community, and that's so false. And the first thing that you could do is just follow the hashtag that me and my students created a couple months back, which is the creative life. So if you just follow
hashtag creative life.
Yeah, if you follow hashtag the creative life, most of my students use that hashtag. I use it in almost all of my it's actually the creative life, THE creative life. So most of my students use it. I use it in most of my things, and we have like we have like over 200 people that are following it, which is so nice, because when we first created it, there was like nobody following that hashtag, which is why we chose it, so we could watch it grow. Nice. But that's been really lovely. And I do want to say that the voiceover community on LinkedIn is so huge and amazing. I mean, I did not realize how big of a voiceover community that there is on LinkedIn until this year. It's truly, it's just amazing. They're so great and funny. Like a lot of them,
I could use a voice coach. Y'all should reach out to me.
I have so many that I could suggest to you. But so that's the other thing, is that there is a creative community and it's growing and it is becoming a safer place for entertainment workers to be on. And also, it's been great seeing entertainment workers educate the rest of the workforce about their work, because they're looking for work. So the amount of posts that I've seen from entertainment professionals talking about, listen, I'm having a hard time getting through to employers that you should hire me, and this is a message that I want to send out. So that's another good thing about it, is that we have been educating or attempting to educate the rest of the other industries that are out there about entertainment workers. So that's been a good thing.
You know, it would be a funny skit. You know, those old like 80s videos, the dating videos where it's like a blue background and they're in their jeans and mullet and they're like, hey, I'm Ken and I like long walks on the beach. Like, I think we should all rally together and just make a comedy skit like that, but talk about like, hey, I'm the audio engineer, front of house, not back of house. No. Like, like I think it'd be funny. We could
really
make
funny.
that. I'm just saying.
Great. Actually, I actually encourage all of my clients to, when I do a LinkedIn challenge, I encourage them to create a video. So maybe I'll do that. I'll encourage them to do that kind of skit next time.
I would love for that to be a whole compilation. You know, people like select the awkward parts and just put it all together. But entertainment workers.
Right.
It's a funny way to kind of talk about what it is we do. I've been telling people lately, like, oh, I used to do cool things. I used to be a cool person. I'm not now.
No, you are. Look at you.
No, I'm totally kidding. I love what I do. So I do want to kind of touch on creating content on LinkedIn. I don't want to take away from your class and what you have to offer, but I do want to say it's super cool and unique that you talk about tarot cards on LinkedIn. I'm not gonna lie. When I first read it, like, it was one of the first posts of yours that I read, one of the tarot cards one. And my initial impression was, that's so weird. What does that have to do with LinkedIn? And then I'm like, I think I read a little bit more. And then I go, oh, well, she's got a point. Oh, well, that's a very unique perspective on whatever it was you were talking about that day. I mean, you guys should follow Alexandria on LinkedIn. She posts like the greatest stuff. It's so interesting and it's such a unique perspective. And you get so many people commenting on your stuff and providing unique perspectives. Like recently you were asking about resumes.
Yeah, functional versus reverse chronological. Mm-hmm.
Yes, functional resumes versus reverse chronological. And I was interested in seeing the different opinions from people. You got people who are like super against the functional resumes. And as someone who is very project-based, to me, it makes more sense to do a functional resume. But, you know, it's really cool seeing the people commenting on your stuff because then it provides insight on what someone in that industry may be looking for. Someone in a certain, you know, with a corporate position, they may be looking for that, you know, straight edge, black and white, the chronological resume. So you figure out how you take your experience and make it work for you. There was one guy who just hated the functional resume concept and was saying, well, if they didn't do it in the past 5 years, then it's not relevant and I don't want to hear about it. And I was thinking, I think I've had multiple positions. I've had maybe 5 or 6 different hats that I've had to wear all within the past 5 years. And it's not like I had different job titles, but the tasks that were required of me were so different that it did kind of force me to have a certain set of skills for each thing that I had to achieve, if that makes sense. For example, not only am I a rigger, but I also do technical writing. I write SOP documentation. I write rescue plans. I know how to rescue people. And each of those different things, not all people who are an entertainment rigger have experience in each of those things. Some have the experience in all of those things, you know? So it's just because you are a title doesn't mean that you don't have multiple hats that you have to wear underneath it. So anyway, love your content. It's very interesting. Reading people's comments provides a lot of insight, and I encourage anybody to do that. Get involved, look at comments, interact with people, because that's really how you're going to get a lot of benefit for yourself. But just real quick, what is the wrong way to create content on LinkedIn?
Too much self-promotion is definitely one that I'm always telling people. I mean, people always ask me, like, how do I get a really good engagement? It's like, well, think about it. If you're only talking about yourself, then how much engagement are you really going to get other than congratulations on your self-reflection, right? It's just... Yeah. So I think that's the first thing. And but the thing is, people, and I understand why people do it, because they're afraid, like, well, what if I don't do it? Like, what's the point of all of this if I don't try and tell people what I'm doing? It's because, like, quite frankly, most people don't care about your celebrations until they actually know who you are and that you've gained a following. And the way that you gain a following and you gain engagement is by actually asking questions. So that's the first thing, is you're always asking a question in your LinkedIn posts. I always tell my clients, you should always want to end your posts with a question to invite those comments, right? So that's another thing as well. And the other thing too is code switching, right? So with the tarot cards, for example, it's not easy to write a tarot card type of post on LinkedIn. I've written them before, and that one that you're talking about did the best out of all of them that I've ever written. And that's the other thing too, is that trial and error is really important. You're not always going to write a great one, but you need to learn from them. And so with that post in particular, it was still a learning moment. So, instead of just talking about tarot cards on LinkedIn, I have to code switch, right? Like on Instagram, if I was still on Instagram, I could just like post a picture of tarot cards and get likes on it because it's a beautiful picture. But on LinkedIn, there's got to be a reason for it. So instead of just like posting a picture of a reading and describing the reading, instead what I did was taught anybody else out there, like, hey, if you read tarot cards, this is how I ask my questions, right? This is the format and how I ask my question before I do a reading. And, of course you're going to see other tarot readers. There's 700 million people on the platform itself. And a lot of people did comment and they were like, well, I'm going to do this next time I do my reading. And also I use my cards for career questions all the time, right? So that's the other thing too, is you're code switching for LinkedIn and it has to be career related in some way, shape, or form. I mean, a post of you taking a picture of like a beautiful landscape in front of your house and saying, have a great Sunday. It just doesn't work on LinkedIn. It wouldn't even work if I did it and I have over 6,000 followers, right? Because that's what people are there for. And that's the other thing. You have to ask yourself, why are people on the newsfeed? People are on the newsfeed to learn or to have conversations. So you have to ask yourself, does this question or does this post invite a conversation? Also, formatting is so important. There is a wrong way of formatting and it drives me crazy. I mean, seeing huge blocks of text just drives me nuts. And I mean, if you just break up your thoughts, that would make your post like 10 times better, even if you are talking about yourself. Like if you're gonna talk about yourself in a post, at least break it up, because that's the other thing you have to remember, is that when people are scrolling, it's so much to take in. You have like 3 seconds to grab someone's attention to actually keep them to keep reading. And if you click on 2 more, and it's like a huge block of text, forget it. You lost me. I'm done. Right? It's not easy for me to read through that. So that's another thing. So those are the main tips that I have when
I do bullet points now, it has to be like a triangle, or here, that makes more sense to people. It's like, what's my shortest sentence? Okay, longer. I can't
Oh
Like
man.
I do like when things look pretty generally, but then I saw your post where you talked about that and I was like, oh gosh, I really should be doing that, huh? That
Oh
just
my god.
confirms that my perfectionism is a good thing when it comes to posting.
Any
It's got to
of,
look pretty.
any of my clients that are gonna watch this later are gonna just like laugh hysterically because I am the worst when it comes to that. I am like in my content creation class, I talk about this for at least 5 minutes, right? And it's gotten to the point where my clients like send me their list and they're like, look at my beautiful list. So it's true. You want to make it pretty. Like that is
Yeah.
a factor in it because otherwise people are gonna want to read it. So, you know, giving back to your audience, making it a learning moment, making sure that it's formatted beautifully, and not worrying so much about it being relevant to your career. I mean, again, it's a networking platform. There's a lot of water cooler talk, and that's what the stories are for too, as well as the water cooler top.
Mhm.
And a lot of people tend to, I mean, it gets so confused with people that get so annoyed when there's a not so obvious career related content that's circulating on LinkedIn. It's like, listen, what do we talk about at the water cooler or what do we talk about at a networking event? We're not always talking about work. We
Yeah.
talk about our
Right.
families, right? So, I mean, like you were talking about families before. There are so many posts on LinkedIn about parents and posting beautiful photos of their children. But the difference between that and posting your photo of your child on Facebook is that on Facebook, it's look at my baby, it's so cute. And on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
there is this pressure of I'm sharing a photo of my child and also sharing a reminder that this is a great time for parents right now to be able to spend time with their children. And this is something that employers should consider in terms of giving more flexible options in the future, right?
Mhm.
For parents. So it's not just look at my family, it's look at my beautiful family and how happy we are because of the circumstances, because of the flexibility. And this is something that I'd like to see for other people. So
One of my favorites that I saw recently, a worker from Disney was she has been a like an ambassador for the company, if you will. And now she's looking for work and has just been working so hard. And she posts a lot of content on LinkedIn and it's great content. I mean, she was an ambassador for the company. She's a great speaker. And one of my favorite posts that she makes is she's actually holding her toddler, her baby, and she's brushing her teeth. And, it's just a short, like 3-second video or something, but she's talking about like there's a lot to be said about an image like that. She's getting ready for an interview. She's got to take care of the kids. She's got to get herself ready. She's dedicated to what she does personally and professionally. I just think it's super badass. Like I totally commend her. Her name is Caitlin and I don't want to butcher her last name, but hopefully we'll have her on this show.
I think I know who you're talking about. I think I follow her actually.
Yes, her last name starts with a B.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe you can put it in the comments later if you find it.
Caitlin Busher.
Oh, yes.
USS Share. CHER. Yeah, y'all should follow her too. She's super cool. I like posting or I like sharing her posts on behalf of industry explorers because she's got like a lot of good content as well.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do you have this is supposed to be like the first topic, but I feel like we've saved it for last. Job search strategy.
Oh, so funny. Well, the first thing that I definitely want to encourage all entertainment workers out there is that the Career Center at the Actors Fund is no cost, and I encourage everyone to check out orientation. If you just go to actorsfund.org/workshops, you will see the Career Center orientation on our calendar for Mondays and Thursdays. So I highly recommend going to our orientation so you have access to our classes because you will learn how to create a resume. You will learn about interviewing, networking, personal branding, all the things.
Is that right down there? Sorry, the actorsfund.org/career.
/ workshops, actually, so that they could be taken to the workshop calendar. But in terms of job search strategy, and because we're almost out of time, I think that I think the best piece of advice that I could give is that connection is so important, and you're only going to get your best ideas of where you should be steering your job search direction into by tapping into your network. Start with people that you know, start with your friends and your family, and say, listen, this is what I'm dealing with, and this is what I know that I can do. Do you know anybody that I should talk to in terms of finding employment, or maybe helping me put together my resume? Really trying to find that support system is very, very important. The other thing too is, do not be afraid to follow up with people. Don't be afraid to try and find someone's email address for a job that you submitted to. And don't be afraid to reach out to the wrong person, right? That's another thing that a lot of people have trouble with, is they can't find the right person, or they're not sure that this is the absolute right person. It's like, that's just ridiculous, right? If you submit an application for something, you have to follow up with a human being quickly, right? Because there's so much competition now. So there are a couple of websites. So there's one called Cultivated Culture, and that one, Cultivated Culture, has something called Mail Scoop, and it's a resource. It's a free resource that you could use that could most likely give you the email address to an HR person, or as long as you have someone's name and you have the website of the company, most likely Mail Scoop can give you the email address that you're looking for, and just send an email to somebody and say, hey, I submitted for this job, and I'm looking forward to next steps. And also, with that being said, follow up on all of your rejections the same exact way. I think that's another thing that a lot of people don't do, and they oftentimes feel defeated when they receive a rejection. And don't let it defeat you, because you never know. The person that they do choose might not work out. And if you're the one that sends a really lovely note afterwards saying, thank you so much for letting me know, keep me in mind in the future, I would love to stay in touch, like, here's my LinkedIn link, staying on someone's radar is so important. And like, who's going to be the first person that they reach out to if the candidate that they choose doesn't work out? It's going to be you.
Right. Yeah.
They don't want to go through this all over again. They're not going to want to go through a whole job search, a candidate search all over again. So don't let rejections defeat you. Just respond to them, ask for feedback, and try to stay connected. So, all that to say is, talking to people is really important. Don't be afraid. There's no such thing as stupid questions. There's no such thing as a wrong person to reach out to. The worst thing that will happen is that somebody will say, no, I can't help you, or no, I don't have any ideas. But you know what? Maybe a couple of weeks down the line, they will have an idea. That literally just happened to me today. I mean, somebody that's been asking for my assistance, and I'm like, I'm keeping you in mind. I'm going to keep you in mind. And finally today I was like, I actually have something for you, right? So I was able to send them an opportunity for them to submit to that I have a connection for. So that's the thing, is you're never really bugging anyone. Just keep following up. And also, again, like, don't just submit an application without reaching out to somebody. That's crucial.
That's really, really great advice. And it's advice that we hear time and time again, is network, network, network. That's such a theme throughout this whole series, is everybody's talking about networking and reaching out to people. Start with people within your own circle, and don't be afraid to reach out to someone, because if they're not the person that is going to have the opportunity for you, well, they may know someone who may know someone who may know someone. And for all the millennials and I guess Gen Z out there. Is Gen Z old enough to work? I don't know.
Yeah, they are.
But for all you guys who grew up on SpongeBob, I knew this guy who knew this guy who knew this guy who knew this guy who knew this guy's cousin who knew this guy who knew this guy. And that's where the opportunity was.
Yeah. It was so actually today I wrote about it. But last week, somebody reached out to me, a really great colleague of mine, recommending one of her colleagues for a job at the Actors Fund in a completely different department. And the recommendation was so glowing. And because I really trust my colleague, I forwarded the message to our HR director. And within a day, the candidate got a phone call. It's like, that candidate probably remembered that my colleague worked with the Actors Fund and said, hey, I just submitted, would you be able to put a good word in for me? And, she did. So it's not going to hurt anyone to ask for help. And I think that is the main piece of advice that I just want everybody to remember is like during this time, people want to help. So do not be afraid of asking for help. You might not always ask the right person, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's nothing bad is going to happen if you ask the wrong person. It's just like, okay, let me just try someone else. Right. So people is what's going to get you through the door, not just submitting an application online. Because another one of my clients, she told me that she had an informational interview with some guy, and he was saying to her, yeah, like I have a job that I'm hiring for. I had 70 applicants, only 4 out of the 70 reached out to me, to follow up. It's like,
wow.
Well, those 4 people just made his job so much easier because an employer is sitting there feeling overwhelmed with the stack of resumes, and they're like, where do I start? And they're obviously going to start with the people that reach out first because they had enough sense to, and they obviously want the job more than the other, 60 plus. So that's another thing as well.
Do you have any last minute words of wisdom, advice or comments for people who are searching for a job?
Yes. My favorite one is to still create something and still work on something on your own. Come up with your own project. And a really great example, my partner, my boyfriend, he's in production, and he's been interviewing for this production gig. And the interviewer themselves were like, wow, your setup is really great. It's really impressive. And the reason why the setup is so good, because he took it upon himself to say, you know what, I'm going to start streaming on Twitch. That means I need a ring light. That means I need a microphone. That means I need a better camera so that I could actually just do something and create something while I look for a job. And it gives me something to talk about in my interview when an interviewer is asking me what I've been up to all this time. So creating something on your own is so important. You also don't know where that might lead you either. And also creating something, if you put your mind to actually doing a project, you're forced to learn things. You're forced to research equipment. You're forced to research how to use a specific software. So you're developing skills that you want to develop during the process as well. So other than just job searching and networking, I think it's really, really important for people to create. And that one of my clients that took my challenge, for example, and she got the content creation job that I was talking about earlier, she was able to use the content that she wrote on LinkedIn through my challenge as her writing samples, which is what they asked for.
Awesome.
And they loved it. And so, she took it upon herself, like, I'm going to write every day. That's going to be my project, is to figure out LinkedIn and write and get back into writing. So create. Even if you're not getting paid for it, you should still be creating, because that is going to open more doors for you. Absolutely.
I think that's super awesome advice. And it's funny because that actually happened to me. So I started doing this live stream to help entertainment and events workers. And then I'm also working on a podcast that will launch in February. And I'm doing these in steps to build my brand, build brand awareness, so that eventually my dream is to do a documentary series about women in male-dominated industries and to showcase their badassery. So I was kind of figuring out how to get that ball rolling, and I was talking to the people at ENSA, and I was like, hey, I would love to interview one of your employees. May I? And learning opportunity for me. There's so much more prep work that I need to do in order to make that a reality. But one day, it's going to happen. And, but anyway, so So I contacted these people, and we had a conversation about it. And at the end of it, I go, hey, so actually, I know a couple of people. I am connected to a few people who work for you. I hear you're hiring. I hear you're looking for safety trainers. I used to be an instructor, and I have experience. I was wondering if maybe I could get on the team. And so now I'm an instructor with ENSA. So
Oh, that's
it's kind of
great.
funny how these things work. Like, I originally called them wanting to talk about making a documentary series, and at the end I was like, hey, so you have this need and I can fill it. You want to do you want to hire me on? You want me to send a resume? And yeah, resume, interview, got hired. Now I'm training for it. So yes, I just want to use my story to absolutely validate that piece of advice that you have for everybody. Create something. Industry Explorers was something that I created to fill my time,
Right.
and honestly, I love making videos. I love doing this. This was my passion when I was a kid. And like, my video camera broke when I was in high school. So I just stopped making videos, and I haven't done that for the past 10 years. So now it's like, I kind of feel rusty. Like, I feel like if I were doing this during those 10 years, I'd be much better at it than I am today, but whatever, everything's got a learning curve. But I love creating. It's a lot of fun, and it keeps me engaged. It keeps me looking forward to the next day.
Yeah.
Right. I give myself milestones, So
Yes.
I think your advice is absolutely wonderful. Do you have any last minute message for employers or LinkedIn developers?
Yes, please. LinkedIn developers, listen to your users, especially the entertainment industry, because they are one of the largest industries that are suffering right now, and they are talking about it. And honestly, I've not seen a lot of change, and I love the platform so much. I think the networking is great, but there has been a lot of advice put out there about improvements that need to be made on the platform. I would even suggest putting together a focus group of entertainment professionals, put together a focus group and ask them questions related to what can make this better for you, and see what you could change. And for employers, just please be open-minded. Be open-minded. Not everyone's resume is going to look great from the entertainment industry. Most of them are going to look very, very different than what you're used to, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't reach out to read their cover letters, or reach out to them. Even if they reach out to you and you look at the resume and you're confused by it, the fact that they reached out to you says a lot. So please don't dismiss them just because their resume is something that makes you that's different than what you're used to. Be open-minded, give them the time. And if you don't think that they are a good fit for you, that's okay. But at least give them the time so that you could give them some advice and introduce them to someone. So don't just dismiss them. They're just trying to figure out how to navigate these waters. So that's my biggest piece of advice for employers, for sure. And thank you for having me.
Where can people find you?
LinkedIn. I don't have any other social media or website, so they could certainly find me at my LinkedIn page, linkedin.com/in/Alexandria Bellivan. You'll be able to find me easily, and feel free to send me a connection request or follow me if that's what you prefer. But I pretty much connect with almost everyone. So.
I absolutely love it. I'm so glad you were on Industry Explorers with us to share your insight. I really hope that people reach out to you on LinkedIn and follow your stuff, because it's gold. It's platinum, if I may say so myself. I love following you. Thank you for giving me your time. Thank you for sharing your insights with our listeners. Industry Explorers, thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, I will see you on our next adventure. Take care, everybody.